y'all! So, as a high schooler, I often find it hard to find recommendations for books that I think are great for my age. I'm currently a senior, but I know that even as a junior or a sophomore, I had trouble. And I started reading again in my sophomore year, and I wanted to be able to read all of these books, but I was like a little bit young for a lot of it. So it's hard to find these recommendations. So I thought I'd make a recommendation video for high schoolers. I have recommendations for every grade level that I think are great for your age group, that some you might read in school, some you might not, some that I just think are important to read in general. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with Freshmen. The first book I have to recommend for current or rising freshmen is Of Mice and Men. I read this for my English class. I don't own a copy. I thought that it was phenomenal. The way that it explores friendship, in particular how friendship works when people are at two different parts or stages of life, is really powerful. It was written in the 1930s. Some of the language reflects that time and how things were viewed back then. However, I do think overall it is very well written and it's a very important book to read. And another thing about it is it's less than 200 pages, so it's very quick. Once you meet our two main characters, it's almost impossible to put it down. The next book I would recommend for high school freshmen is Emma by Jane Austen. Now, you might be scared of reading Emma. It was written in the 1800s, Regency era. Ooh, scary. Trust me, it is so easy to get through. Emma is Jane Austen's famous comedy about a matchmaker who has no idea what she's doing. Emma Woodhouse thinks she's all that, but she's not. She can be insufferable at times, but she is also hilarious and lovable, and honestly, her heart is in the best place. It is such an entertaining book to read, and it'll also give you some new vocabulary that you can use throughout high school. One of the things I appreciate most about it, being someone who has read Jane Austen before I went into high school, was I was able to use these words that other students wouldn't, and it made my writing stand out more, and it helped me score better in English as a whole. And I think Emma is a really good place to start. It looks a little bit long, trust me, it flies by. It's also, if you get, certain copies are divided into 3 volumes, which makes it a little more palatable. If you want to get started on classic literature, Emma is definitely a great place to start. The next book I recommend for freshmen in high school is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I think this book is one of my favorite TikTok books I've read. It's less than 300 pages and it flies by. It's also one of the first books I ever annotated. This is one of my favorite books I have ever read. It's very pretentious. It follows a girl who went through a traumatic head injury, and she's going back to the place where the traumatic head injury happened, and she's trying to remember what led up to this. And so we see her interact with her cousins who are like her best friends. It is such a great book. Highly recommend. Super fast pace, super short writing, so you feel like you're reading so much and you read so fast. The text is big. It's YA, but I think it's in the middle range where like 15-year-olds can enjoy it, which is why I think it's great for freshmen. The next book I recommend for current or rising freshmen is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This is a YA romance novel, but what's so unique about it is you find out the tragic thing that's going to happen at the beginning. It's a bit longer, but it flies by. The text is very big. It's simple writing, and I think the younger you are, the more you'll appreciate it. If you're looking for some romance novels that don't necessarily go into adults or don't have like topics or characters that aren't as relatable to you, this is great because it follows Autumn, our main character, through the entirety of her high school career. And I think it is brilliant. The next book I recommend is one I don't own. It is called Neighborhood Girls. You probably haven't heard of it. It follows, from what I remember, this girl as she just explores life in a school, like grappling with friendships she lost and a bad relationship with her father, young love, all of this stuff. And I thought it was so profound. It is beautifully written from what I remember. I read this when I was a freshman, so it's been a while, but I still think about it all the time. In particular, the ending, from what I remember, it it was a very good book for me to read as a 14-year-old because it introduced me to YA as a concept, as in books being written for for older teenagers who are like generally the target audience for YA. And I think it's a really good thing about that is that it's so easy to read that it makes its topics more relatable to a general audience. I also do not own this next book, and that is Playlist for the Dead. This was another one I read my freshman year. I don't remember it as vividly as I remember Neighborhood Girls, but I thought that the concept was very unique, where this character's brother, I believe, had died and left a playlist, and the character was listening to this playlist over and over and over again, trying to figure out what had happened to their brother. And I thought that the twist at the end I did not see the twist coming, and I thought it was a really great book. It is another one that introduces you to YA very nicely, which high school is around where I would say YA should be considered like what you're reading, as opposed to middle grade, which is a little bit more childish. Next one is an audiobook that I listened to on Libby. I don't own it, obviously, but I think it's very helpful, and it's something I think about when I'm composing emails to teachers. It is nonfiction. It's called Digital Body Language. I don't remember the author's name, but it's about how you can be more professional and how to integrate aspects of the 21st century, like using emojis, using exclamation points into your emails for work or school, and demonstrating how they can be used in a professional setting. I think about some of the things she said in this book quite frequently. For example, when you're in a position of power, when you email, you're going to use words like you instead of words like I, where someone in a lower position would use those because you are in control. You don't have to do anything for them. But when you're at a lower level, you want to show your initiative, so you say, I did this, I did that. And I think about that all the time, and I try to be conscious of it when I'm writing emails. I also don't own the next one. This one is a graphic novel called Garlic and Vampire. This was just really cute. I thought it was just a nice little break. It's about 150 pages. It's really quick, and it explores friendship and love and all of that, and I thought it was a great little palate cleanser, and I think anyone of any age, but in particular high school freshmen, would appreciate this. The next book I'm recommending for high school freshmen is The Summer of Broken Rules. A lot of people talk about The Summer I Turned Pretty and the vibes it gave them. I did not like The Summer I Turned Pretty. I would not recommend The Summer I Turned Pretty. This actually did have really good summer vibes. It's a great introduction to romance. There's no spice. Anyone of any age can enjoy it, but I think in particular high school freshmen, because it's not entirely mature. I thought it was cute. It was not like something I would go back to as an older student. However, I think someone younger would enjoy it quite a bit. This next thing that I'm going to recommend is a series, and I would say at around the third volume, it gets a little bit darker, so read with discretion through 4 and 5. Heartstopper! We all know what Heartstopper is about, I assume, but basically it's about Nick and Charlie, and they're discovering how they feel about each other and how their relationships develop as they get older, and they explore all of these aspects of social life, sexuality, and other things that are important that you really discover in high school. I think it would be good for a freshman because it's YA, so it gives you a chance to like dip your toes into like seeing how as you get older high school develops, and it's also not super explicit, so it's nice to like see these things. I will say the 5th volume was a bit more explicit than the other ones, and then the 4th volume went into some mental health topics, and that's why I say read it with a little bit of discretion, but I think the first 3 volumes in particular are fine for high school freshmen to read. I have 2 more recommendations for high school freshmen before I move on to sophomores, so let me grab them. So my last recommendation for high school freshmen is the Grishaverse, starting with the Shadow and Bone trilogy and continuing on to the Six of Crows duology. I have not read Crooked Kingdom, but I thought Six of Crows was great. It's really action-packed. It's long, but it keeps you on the edge of your seat once you get into the world, and the characters are very lovable, which makes it easy to follow. I also think that the plot explores some aspects of life that are really important, like building family outside of your own, which is something I feel that I discovered in high school was equally as important, because the family we choose often shapes us more than the family we have at this age, and I think it's very important to build a family that reflects the values and beliefs you want to bring with you in life. All right, so that brings us to sophomores. So when you're a sophomore in high school, you're starting to gain a little bit more discretion. You're starting to understand what you believe in and if that affects how you read or should affect. For example, I was a sophomore when I started reading books with a bit more adult content because I knew I had the mental state to skip through the scenes where needed based on my religious beliefs. And I think that as you get older, you are able to read a bit more adult content. You've also been in high school for a whole year. You're starting to see how older students and people in general act, and I think that will reflect on your reading. The first book I recommend for sophomores is Eleanor and Park. This doesn't have its dust jacket on because I went through a phase of recycling dust jackets. This is a heavier book. It explores a romance between two people who don't necessarily have the best relationships with their birth families. It goes into some issues of racism, classism, fat phobia, things like that. However, it's a really good book. It will have you on the edge of your seat. You want to see how they exist. Everyone who I've talked to who's read it all the way through really enjoys it. There is some language in there that's not necessarily great, and there are like some terms that are a bit derogatory, which keep in mind when you're reading it. But other than that, it is an incredible work, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. Next book I do not own. It is called If These Broken Wings Could Fly. It explores the topic of domestic violence, so keep that in mind when reading it. It's about a girl living with an abusive father in a town that is being overtaken by crows. I read it in 3 days the summer before my sophomore year and was in awe. I want to go back and reread it. I think that this book needs so much more attention. It was beautifully written. It was such a great exploration. If you want to a bit of a deeper book and want to start understanding deeper concepts through literature, it is a really great place to start. My next recommendation is the first adult romance novel on this list, and that is Book Lovers. From what I remember, it is not super spicy, so there might have been 1 or 2 scenes in there, but it's about two publishers who are grumpy, great trope, not overdone, and it also explores Nora's relationship with her sister, which is really interesting. I think it is a really nice break from school and stress because none of the topics in there are very heavy, and so it gives you a nice little break from whatever you're going through with school, which is one of the reasons reading is so fun during school, because escapism. But yeah, highly recommend Book Lovers. I have recommended it to several friends and they all enjoyed it. My next recommendation is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is a Canadian copy because I saw they had the paperback and I got really excited, so I bought it. This is about a author whose friend chokes on a pancake and dies, leaving behind her manuscript, and this author chooses to steal the manuscript and publish it under her own name. It explores racism, forced victimhood, and I think it's incredibly powerful. It's also incredibly smart, and I think it's a really great way to learn about how different industries work. It's not super explicit is another thing, and I remember being on the edge of my seat for the entire thing. The narrator is also so unlikable that you just find yourself yelling at her internally, which is, if you don't like frustrating characters, not for you. But I love frustrating characters. I think it's so fun to hate on a main character of a book, so I highly recommend this. My next recommendation is Remarkably Bright Creatures. I read this year, my junior year, and it is one of the sweetest sad books I have ever read. Our main character is an older woman, but we also get POV chapters from an octopus, which was one of my favorite parts of the book. They would be like 2 minutes long, and it just be this octopus being like, humans are kind of dumb, guys, so they should just shut up and let me chill. And I totally agree. It explores themes of grief, loss of a parent, loss of childhood, and stuff like that. But overall, it's just a heartwarming story about how finding family is really important. And I still think about it and the way it made me cry while I was listening to Octopus's Garden, of all songs. Next book I'd like to recommend is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This is a witchy rom-com. I read it in my sophomore year. I don't remember it being particularly explicit. It explores some themes like loneliness and grief, and that really brings it up and over a lot of other witchy rom-coms, which don't really go anywhere deeper than, oh, it's magic, oh, it's cute. This has so much depth. I love the incorporation of Jane Austen throughout also, and I think it's a really great book that anyone can enjoy at any age, but I think particularly for sophomores, it's a nice little break from stresses. My next recommendation for sophomores is The Night Circus. All vibes, barely any plot, but I love it. It is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I think about this all the time. The world building is just magical. It's particular for the fall. It is a great book. I love it so much. It's also pretty easy to find at used bookstores. Just keep your eyes open for it. I got this for $2 and I gave it a 4.5 stars. So I think that is bang for your buck. The next book I recommend for high school sophomores is Daisy Jones and the Six. I read this at the beginning of my junior year and I really enjoyed it. It's told in the format of interviews, which is really makes it super fast to read, makes it really enjoyable. It makes you feel so much more connected to the characters because you get to see everyone's point of views and hear exactly what they thought. Also, I just think Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is beautiful. Honestly, any of her backlist you could also read and enjoy. I would recommend it for all ages, definitely, but in particular, this one for sophomores because it's faster paced, keeps your attention, but still explores some deeper topics that are very important to learn about. The next series I recommend is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This book series made me sob at an instrumental music concert. I don't own the third one, which was the one that made me cry so hard because I have them in the standard paperbacks, so I have to wait for it to come out in the paperback. And also not buy it at Barnes & Noble because they keep doing the fancy editions and it's not cutesy. It's annoying because I need just the normal paperback. Jackson, this book is one of my favorite book boyfriends ever. The third book broke me. I wasn't even crying over the book. I was crying over the fact that the ending was an ending that I was happy with. I'm gonna try not to spoil it. But I also think that Evangeline is just so relatable because she's just like, oh, well, I don't really care what he wants. I want this. So I'm gonna go do that. We love to see it, girl. Like, go get it. My final recommendation for high school sophomores is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is a book translated from Japanese into English, and it is about a coffee shop with a chair that allows you to travel back in time, but there's some very specific rules. I think it's a really great magical realism book, and I think it explores some heavier topics like grief in a way that's easily palatable for a younger person. It doesn't really go on into anything like super deeply, but the way it explores it is very easy to comprehend, which makes it a good learning opportunity for younger readers. I say as I am 2 years older than these people. All right, moving on to the year we all dread, junior year. Oh my word. Junior year sucks. Everything's going down. You're taking AP Calc. You have the SATs, you're starting to take harder classes. That was the first year I did more than one higher level, like AP IB class. Oh my word, was it bad. I had first period calculus too. not a great period for calculus when you're very used to using your math class as your, oh, I'm gonna read because it's easy class. But shout out to my calc teacher because he was really chill and he just let me sit in the back of the class and be on my book. But junior year is also fun because you're starting to be more adult. You're starting to feel more like you can comprehend a lot of things, and you start to just know more about what you as a person enjoy. And my first recommendation for high school juniors is the Throne of Glass series. I read this early to halfway through my junior year, and I still think about these. My camera fell. But as I was saying, these are life-changing. Now those fell. Okay. So your first time reading this series, I know there's debate about this. You're not going to read Assassin's Blade first. You are going to read Throne of Glass first. I'm going to tell you why. Throne of Glass is a lot easier to get into than Assassin's Blade, and Assassin's Blade hits equally as hard third way through the series, which is what you're going to do. You're going to read it in publication order, which is Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Assassin's Blade, Heir of Fire. This one's not as good as the first three in my opinion, but to each their own. It is very important. Queen of Shadows. This is my second favorite in the series. So worth getting through Heir of Fire just so you can get to Queen of Shadows, in my opinion. Empire Storms. Third favorite in the series. Sorry, this is my second favorite, third favorite. And you're going to tandem these your first time reading it because this ends on a brutal cliffhanger. And this is really hard to sit through. It's going to take you about 3 weeks probably. Just fight it through. There are chapter to chapter things. Trust me, it's worth it to read this as if it's one big book, because then you get to go right into the best book in the series. And you don't have to sit on that painful cliffhanger for more than like 3 chapters. You get... This book, over 1,000 pages. Look at that spine. It's caved in. I go back and just reread what I have underlined in this. There's one scene in here I read during calculus and was literally losing my mind. Like, this is not happening right now. But yeah, Throne of Glass is going to change your life if it's your kind of book, and you will not regret reading it. It is such a beautiful, painful, wonderful journey. My next recommendation is Getting a Rabbit. JK, but also Joseph says hello. Alright, buddy, let's go get you back outside, okay? Look at the camera follows you. He's really scared right now, but he's also very cute. Anyway, my next recommendation for juniors is the Divine Rivals duology. I do have the physical copies. I'm not grabbing them right now. I read this through Kindle Unlimited. I think these books are really cute. I think they're for older YA readers though, because of some of the stuff that goes on in them. There's magic typewriters. It's really just the hint of magical realism. You need to get through the heck that is junior year. The next one I recommend for juniors is The Dead Romantics. Ashley Poston is known for her magical realism romance, and this is no exception. The main character, Florence, can see ghosts, and everything's well and good until the ghost of her new boss shows up on her doorstep. And I think it's a really cute romance novel. It's very unique. That's one thing I will say about Ashley Poston. She does not write anything like anything else you have seen. It's also not super spicy, so if that's not your thing, that's a really good book, because as you get to junior year, you're probably reading more adult than young adult, and it is very hard to find non-spicy romance novels that are enjoyable to read, and I definitely would say this one, with its one spice scene, which is way at the end, so super easy to skip, is worth it. My next recommendation for high school juniors is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This one is really great. I think that there are aspects of it that could be better, but it's such a unique concept. It's about this girl who makes a deal with the devil essentially to let her live forever. However, she can't be remembered. The second she goes around a corner, everyone forgets who she is. She can't show up in photographs or anything like that. No one knows her until someone remembers her. And I think it's such a unique story, and I really enjoyed when we flash back to her past, because it goes between past and present, so you get to see Addie in the past, but you also get to see her as she is when the book takes place. If you have not been introduced to the gem that is Christian Hanna, look no further than Firefly Lane. Firefly Lane is one of the best books I read last year. This will break you in the best way possible. It follows these two women over the course of their whole lives as their friends. This is the book that made me stop and think, our parents are doing this for the first time too, because you really don't think about that a whole lot. I don't think my tabs will show up. There aren't a whole lot of tabs. I underlined more than tabbed from what I remember. Christian Hanna has the beautiful ability to make you both laugh and cry, which is really something else. This next one wasn't initially on my list, but I do think it's one you should read while you're in high school before you're forced to read it for school, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Like I said about Emma before, if you're scared of Jane Austen, don't worry. Pride and Prejudice is the original enemies to lovers. It is such a great book. It explores so many interesting aspects of humanity and how people interact with each other. It's a comedy of manners where you see it make fun of the upper middle class and upper class of society in the Regency area and how they looked at marriage. And also, every single character will make you laugh. Jane Austen pops off with every single book she writes. Honestly, read all of her works while you're in high school. But Emma and Pride and Prejudice are my two specific recommendations that I think everyone can enjoy. My next recommendation I do not own, but it is After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. After I Do follows a married couple who decide to give themselves a year of separation to see if they still love each other the same way they used to. And what's interesting is you see them fall in love modern day, but also before they had such troubles in their marriage. I was rooting for this couple harder than I have rooted for any other couple, and I don't think it's necessarily a romance. I think this is more of a literary fiction book, and that's what makes it so great. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing as well. I think it's beautiful. Funny story about this book. I thought I was reading One True Loves. So I was reading and I was like, I wonder when this guy's gonna die and the other guy's gonna come in. And then I was like, oh, I'm not reading One True Loves. I'm reading a completely different book. Oh well. This one doesn't have the dust jacket on, but it's Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is the only book that has made me cry because of how happy it has made me. I read this my summer before junior year, and I adore this book. Every ounce of my soul loves this book. This book will make you exorbitantly happy. Also, Gus is just such a green flag. Like, I went into it and I went, his name is Gus, which, that's a me thing. And then I went, his name is Gus! I love this man so much. He is one of the, if he wanted to, he would characters. We love him. Taylor Jenkins Reid for the third time in this video. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Listen, this book is her masterpiece. I'm not gonna go against everyone else who says this is her best book because it's genuinely true. Like, do the tabs say anything? This book was a book club pick that I had, but I'd also read it before. Rereading it gave me a whole new appreciation for how wonderful this book is. I know it's talked about so many times, so I won't give you a synopsis of it because you can go look that up. And if you don't want it, I don't want to spoil it. But I highly recommend you read this while still in high school because it really does explore how the world views people. It's a really great exploration of how history shapes us, how the era we live in causes us to act. I think this next one might be my second favorite book that I have ever read, and that is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Daniel is the book boyfriend. I adore this book. This is a 6-star read for me. It's not spicy is another great thing about it. There's like one scene super easy to skip. You're not gonna miss any of the plot with it. It's big city, small town. Age gap, if you're into that, she's older, which is very different. I also just love how the characters, while they're exploring their relationship with each other, they're also developing a relationship with themselves and changing how they look at themselves, which is something Abby Jimenez does in every single one of her books, which I think is really great. The characters are developing together and it's allowing them to become better people. However, they're also developing individually and becoming better because they want to be better for the person that they're with because they love them so much. Abby Jimenez is just my favorite author. Like, did she write my favorite book? No. But have 90% of her books been bangers? Yes, and I need to read more of her stuff. Alright. The next book I recommend is Just for the Summer. I adore this book. This is my MCU. This series is my MCU because there is one in between, which is Yours Truly, which I wasn't as crazy about. It might just have been because I listened to it as opposed to actually read it. I'll have to go back and reread it because I'm rereading this month, hopefully. But Just for the Summer is another example of if he wanted to, he would, because Justin would. I think it's such a funny book. I underlined so much of it. There were baby raccoons at one point. I love the baby. It was so good. Justin is also so funnily petty towards his best friend because they meet through a Reddit thread that he posted, and I think that's hilarious. And it's about how he named his ugly dog after his best friend because his best friend forced him to move into an apartment with a view of a really, like, annoying billboard. And so he was getting revenge on his friend by naming his ugly dog after him. So yeah, highly recommend Just for the Summer. It does also explore some darker topics, but also read the first 2 books in the series before you read Just for the Summer. Read this, and then read the book in between, and then read this, because it will hit so much harder. I don't own this one. My next recommendation is The Notebook by Nicholas Spark. If you've seen the movie, it's a really great movie, but it's also a really good book. It made me cry. Sometimes you just want to cry. It's really quick because it's short. It's like 200 pages-ish. I read it on my Kindle to fly. It was super easy to fly through. Hits almost as hard as the movie, and it's just generally a great story to read. I love Allie and Noah. They're one of my favorite fictional couples ever. My next recommendation for high school juniors is Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Meyer. I think this is one of the funniest books I have ever read. Granted, I don't remember a lot of what happened, but the vibes are great. If you've seen her TikToks, you will know she genuinely loves these characters. Also, look at that nice flop. I love this book with every fiber of my being. I'm reading the second one currently, actually. All of the characters in this book are just so lovable. Everybody is just... I want them all as my best friend. And also, the main couple is great, but the side couples are equally as good. Like, you're rooting for every couple in this book. And that's one of the reasons I love it. I own so many books, is what I'm discovering. I'm, like, getting worn out from filming this. Look, but we're almost done. The next book I would recommend is None of This Is True. I'm not going to grab this because I don't feel like it, by Lisa Jewell. This is a thriller. It kept me on the edge of my seat. It's a really all-consuming book, which sometimes you do need a break from being completely consumed from school. My next recommendation is one I actually picked up at an airport and ended up loving more than I expected. Is She Really Going Out With Him? This is an adult romance novel about 2 writers who work for a blog and who have to write a dating column. I thought it was really cute. It was really unique. It's British, but also, before you read it, do be warned, the word Riz is used in there. And I know a lot of people don't like when slang is used in books. It's not a pet peeve of mine, but it's like, Riz? But yeah, it's a really cute book, and it's also one where the main character has to discover a bit more about herself before she gets with her love interest. Seniors, it's your turn. As a senior myself, this year is stressful. You're figuring out college, you're figuring out where you're gonna be for the next 4 years, and sometimes what do you need? A nice little book to forget about that. But also sometimes it's nice to see what people have written about kids going into college. So my first recommendation is Normal People. This is one I don't think you can really get until you're older because it does go into a lot of more adult topics, but Sally Rooney writes beautifully. I think that her commentary on humanity itself is really important to read and understand, and I think that you're going to get it best when you're at an older level, because as a senior, I know I understand a lot more stuff than I used to. My next recommendation for high school seniors is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This book is exquisite. I would sit in my car before school reading this and sobbing. I don't even remember why it made me sob so much. It just hit at the time. I would have to check my makeup before I went into class every day. 4.5 stars for me. Fredrik Backman also just is really great at writing laugh out loud funny stuff, as well as heart-wrenching. A Man Called Ove is another one I would definitely recommend to read while in high school, for seniors in particular. That one goes into some darker topics though, so just be aware of that. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that if this next book has no fans, I am dead in a ditch. This is different editions of Dracula. This is my all-time favorite book. I think you would be a little bit older though to fully comprehend how brilliant Bram Stoker is. This is terrifying. This is romantic. This is just an all-over edge of your seat, but also incredibly boring book sometimes. Dracula is it. It made me so happy that I can't stop smiling. Mina and Jonathan Harker are what I want my marriage to look like, because they're literally what biblical marriage is. Also, Stoker just writes so well. He was so Irish, and he wrote this Texan character, and this character's first line in the book was, "Now, little Miss Lucy, I know I'm not good enough for the fixings of your little shoes." Why is that so funny? It is so beautiful. Also, I mean, I own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 editions of Dracula. If you own 7 editions of a book, you know it's good. I adore Dracula, and I implore you, if you take no other recommendation from this video, take Dracula. Alright, the next one I'm also not pulling out because it doesn't have its Just jacket on, but it is Lessons in Chemistry. This book is every feminist's dream. It's historical fiction, but it's so easy to get through. It's also not historical romance, so you don't have to deal with weird moral qualms if there are any there. I think it is brilliant. It also has some of the funniest lines I have ever read, which I think you can only fully appreciate if you read the book. The main character is so dry. She is so amazing. I love Elizabeth Zott with every ounce of my being. I think about this book 24/7. It is such a Roman Empire for me. Time for my prized possession. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This edition, beautiful, right? It's signed. It is, in fact, signed. Let me find her signature. This book takes place in a really prestigious acting academy. It's written like a Shakespearean book. It follows the 5-act structure of Shakespeare, and the characters talk in Shakespeare. Oliver and James are 2 of my favorite characters I have ever read. It will keep you on the edge of your seat. It is excruciatingly painful to read at some points. And also, it does also go into some darker issues, which is why I would say wait till your senior year. You can read it earlier, but it is so good. And it is amazing. That's all I can say about it. I think about this book all the time as well, in particular the last scene of it. Next one I don't think people talk about very often, which is really a shame because it was beautiful. This is called In an Instant by Suzanne Redfern. I got this in a blind date with a book. This is a literary fiction about a girl who dies, and then she has to watch her family slowly get over her, and she has to grapple with that. This was beautifully written. This was quick-paced. It was a really interesting book. It kept me on the edge of my seat. But I read this in 2 days, and I thought it was brilliant. This next book, everything clicked into place for me with one line, and I sat down and I sobbed. and that is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I read this during my junior year, could not stop reading. Charlie is my sweet baby angel. It's just so easy to love him, but you realize something has happened to him that he just can't seem to see, and as it goes on, you find out more and more, and explores relationships in high school, and I definitely think it's one that you should pick up. Alright, 2 big book talk hitters next. So first up we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I listened to the audiobook for this on Christmas Day and was obsessed. I will say the girl was obsessed with cheese, which was admittedly a little bit strange, but that's just Ali Hazelwood. You gotta get over the weird things she throws in and just be like, oh, it's Ali Hazelwood. This is chill. This is really cute. It's very easy to root for the characters. He's very good at knowing what she needs, and it's really great. And also, I just love it. This next one, Happy Place by Emily Henry. Emily Henry showing up 3 times on this list. I adore her. This book is so great. This is one of my favorite Emily Henrys, 100%. It's also the only one I've read twice because of how much I love it. It's great audiobook. It's great physically reading. It's not super long either. It's like a 400-ish pages, and it will just capture your heart. It's second chance romance. It's got a bunch of the great tropes. I love Win. Win is my golden retriever. I love him. This next one's a long one, but it is worth it in my opinion. Anastasia by Sophie Lark. This is a bit darker. There's some more adult stuff in it, but it is really good. I love this book. There's also points where she'll just throw in a little like music note symbol, and you'll know, oh, this is a song that I should be listening to while reading it, which is really cool. A way to incorporate a playlist. I will say though, the plot twist in this is infuriating. If you cannot get over that plot twist, which comes like 500-ish pages in, you're gonna hate it. So just keep that in mind. I got over it because I'm a sucker, but I love Anastasia. It's a great book. And my final recommendation of this video is The Storied Life of Adre Thackeray by Gabrielle Zevin. This book is really cute. It's really short. You can read it in a day, and it just explores so many topics of grief and dealing with just changing as you get older. And I think senior year is a year that really is the year that you have to change as you get older. So those were all of my recommendations for high school students. I hope you go and read some of these books, and I hope you enjoy them. Thank you so much for watching this. Bye, y'all.